Late nights at the office weren't uncommon, especially when there was a big project looming over my head. Our office was located in a large 2-story building within a business complex, and sometimes staying late was the only way to catch up on work. I had taken a couple of sick days the previous week, so I was feeling the pressure to get my project done. That night, I planned to stay a few hours late, and then come back the next night to finish up. Typically, there were others who stayed late with me, but on this particular night, I found myself alone. I sat at my desk, surrounded by rows of empty desks, typing away on my laptop. As the night wore on, fatigue started to set in. Despite my best efforts to stay awake, I found myself growing drowsy. I decided to make some coffee in the break room to help keep me alert. As I waited for the coffee to brew, I leaned against the table, struggling to keep my eyes open. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the building, jolting me awake. It sounded like it came from downstairs, but there were no follow-up noises. I hesitated at the doorway, debating whether to investigate. Exhaustion won out, and I convinced myself it was probably just something falling in one of the rooms downstairs. I grabbed my coffee mug and returned to my desk, trying to focus on my work. But despite the caffeine boost, I couldn't shake off my sleepiness. I pushed through for another hour, but eventually, fatigue got the best of me, and I dozed off at my desk. When I woke up, I felt disoriented and irritated. There was a faint beeping noise coming from somewhere in the building, but I couldn't pinpoint its source. Glancing at the time on my laptop, I realized it was nearly 2 a.m. Deciding it was futile to continue working, I packed up my things and headed out to investigate the beeping. As I made my way down the staircase, the beeping grew louder, and a sense of unease settled over me. I reached the main hallway and spotted a metal rod lying on the ground near the entrance door, which should have been locked. It dawned on me that the beeping was from the building's security system. With a surge of adrenaline, I ran to the opposite end of the hallway and out the back door, where I could safely call for help. The police arrived and conducted a thorough search of the premises, but they found no trace of the intruder. Reviewing the security footage revealed the chilling truth of what had happened. At 11 p.m., a man had approached the building and effortlessly broken in with a single strike from a tool. The bang I had heard while getting coffee was the sound of the door being breached. He had silently made his way through the building, eventually reaching the office where I was working. He stood just a few feet behind me, while I typed away, completely unaware of his presence. Later, when I had fallen asleep, he returned, rummaging through the office and even coming up to my desk. It wasn't clear if he had stolen anything, as not every room was covered by security cameras. His motives remained a mystery, but the footage was enough to send shivers down my spine. I vowed never to stay alone in that office again. I work at a gas station right in the middle of my town. My shifts change a lot, but I usually end up working overnight or early mornings. I've been here for about a year now, and honestly, it's not too bad. It's just a regular job, not too fancy, but it pays the bills. All I have to do is stand behind the register for 8 hours and chat with the occasional customer. Today I'm on the overnight shift, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's usually pretty quiet at night, especially during the week. And to add to the calm, it's raining quite a bit tonight, so I expect it to be even quieter than usual. For the first couple of hours, I just sit on a chair behind the register, waiting for customers. A few people come in to pay for gas with cash, but by around 12:30 or 1 a.m., it's dead quiet. No one's coming inside, and hardly anyone is even getting gas outside. With no customers in sight, I decide to tidy up the shelves a bit. They're not too messy, but it gives me something to do. As I'm rearranging items, my back is to the windows, but I catch a glimpse of headlights shining through the store as someone pulls into the pumping stations. I don't pay much attention because it's just a regular person getting gas. I keep busy for maybe 10 minutes before I glance out the window again. The car is still there, and there's a man standing next to it. When I look, he quickly moves out of sight, making it clear he was watching me. Feeling a bit uneasy, especially since he's been there for a while, I return to the counter. I check out the window again after a moment, and I see the man getting into his car. The headlights flicker a few times, as if he's struggling to start it, but eventually, he drives away in a hurry. Something just doesn't sit right with me. I get an idea and check the recent transactions for the pump he used. The last transaction was hours ago. He had no reason to be there for so long other than watching me through the windows. I decide to stay behind the counter for a while longer, hoping the rest of my shift will pass without incident. Around 3 a.m., I hear something outside. The rain makes it hard to hear, but there's a rhythmic shuffling noise, like footsteps along the side of the building, moving towards the back. I try to look out the window, but I can't see much. I notice there are no cars in the parking lot or by the pumps. I quickly make my way to the back door, a heavy metal door with no windows. I press my ear against it and listen as the footsteps get closer. They stop right on the other side of the door, and I stare at the handle, waiting in silence. It turns slowly, but it's caught by the lock. Everything goes quiet for a moment. Then I hear a frustrated grunt from the other side, followed by a sharp sound scraping against the door. Footsteps retreat back to the side of the gas station. I rush back to the front, hoping to catch a glimpse of the person leaving, but I see nothing. I grab the store phone and dial 911, hoping they can catch whoever was trying to get in before they get away. When the cops arrive, they don't find the person, but they do find a car on the side of the road, not far from the gas station. It's the same car I saw earlier, with the man who was watching me. It had run out of gas and had mismatching license plates. Turns out, it was reported stolen from 2 states over. They also find a long scrape across the back door, likely made by a knife. Knowing all this, I realize how lucky I was. The person was probably up to no good, and who knows what could have happened if they had gotten inside. For the past 10 years, I've led a peaceful life in a small town in Wyoming. My cozy cabin is nestled among others, scattered a few miles from the town center where you can find various shops. While some folks have farms, I have a vast expanse of grassy land that stretches toward the mountains. Around 10 months ago, on a typical night, I sat outside by the fire pit with my laptop, a routine I followed almost every evening, weather permitting. It was around 8 p.m., and the crackling campfire provided a calming ambiance. That night, however, took an unexpected turn. I was engrossed in my laptop when I heard a noise through the fire's crackling. I lifted my head to spot a man on the other side of the flame, about 15 feet away. He seemed like a typical local in his 40s, rugged with a large gray beard. Startled, I stood up, attempting to mask the shakiness in my voice as I asked, "What are you doing here? Where did you come from?" The man stared at me with an unsettling look. It felt as if he was on the verge of doing something dreadful. Then he shifted his gaze past me, focusing on my cabin. Without a word, he began walking toward the front of the cabin. Approaching one of the windows, he peered inside, muttering something under his breath. As he turned away, heading toward the trees, I called out, demanding an explanation. Ignoring my words, he disappeared into the darkness. The situation was absurd. A stranger so close to my house, especially at that hour, wasn't a coincidence. His behavior was peculiar, as if he was searching for something and had no qualms about intruding on my privacy. I extinguished the fire, rushed inside, secured the cabin, and grabbed my sidearm just in case. Though I doubted he would return, uncertainty lingered. Contacting the police wasn't a viable option. In our secluded town, their response time was too slow. I was on my own in this remote setting. Determined to stay vigilant, I stayed up for hours past my usual bedtime, monitoring my surroundings for any signs of the mysterious stranger. It must have been 1 a.m. or even 2 a.m. when exhaustion finally overcame me. I drifted off on the couch. Upon waking, I sensed a constant, unusual sound, wind blowing through the house, Confused and groggy, I sat up and noticed the front door wide open. Alarmed, I rushed to close and lock it. Turning around, I braced myself for the possibility of an intruder. Standing by the door for a minute, I listened intently. The silence was deafening, interrupted only by the creaking of the wood due to the wind outside. Cautiously, I explored each room, checking every corner and opening every door. To my relief, no one was inside. Despite the eerie experience, I stayed up all night. At the break of dawn, I drove into town to report the incident to the police. I shared my belief that the man I had encountered was likely the intruder. The bizarre part was the lack of a clear motive. Some odd items were missing, confirming a break-in, but they held little value. Strangely, the intruder neither harmed me nor left any clues about their intentions. Without understanding why they targeted my cabin, the risk of a potential return loomed uncertainly. Back in my mid-20s, I took up a janitor job at a local high school to earn some extra money for a car. It wasn't the best job, but it helped financially. My tasks were the usual janitor stuff: mopping, sweeping, cleaning windows, and so on. I worked 4 days a week, mostly on the night shift. One day, due to a senior prank, I had to work a day shift with another janitor named Todd. The prank was a food fight, and we had to clean up the whole mess. While doing that, the principal came on the PA system, sounding scared, announcing a code red. Todd and I were told to hide in the closet and not come out until the all-clear signal. We waited anxiously in the closet, not knowing what was happening. Suddenly, the cafeteria doors burst open. A tall, pale woman with a knife appeared, making strange noises. She walked around, shouting crazy phrases, clearly showing signs of mental illness and possibly drug use. My phone rang loudly, catching her attention. As she headed towards the closet, crouching like she was trying to be stealthy, I felt scared and unsure how to protect myself in such a small space. Just as she reached the closet door, ready to open it, loud yelling from the main doors distracted her. The police had arrived with guns drawn, instructing her to get down. Thankfully, the police managed to arrest her, and we were safe. Later, we learned she had assaulted the principal and the front desk worker. The school lacked proper security equipment, making us vulnerable. Despite this incident, the school eventually improved its security. What still terrifies me is how lucky we were that the police arrived quickly, thanks to one patrol car in the area. If they had been a minute late, things might have been different. I quit my janitor job after this incident and returned to school. Now, 15 years later, I work for a design company and reflect on that scary situation. While I sometimes share the story, it mostly stays with me as a haunting memory. For the past few years, I've been working as a janitor at a popular fast food joint. My job is simple. I clean. I don't take orders or interact with customers much, because I'm usually scheduled for overnight shifts when the restaurant is closed. Deep cleaning is the name of the game, and it's tough to get it all done during open hours. This particular night started like any other. I arrived at work, and a couple of other employees were still around, but they left shortly after. By 10 p.m., it was just me for the rest of the night. I put on my headphones and got to work, scraping grills and hosing down everything that needed it. Around midnight, I heard a knock at the front of the building. I took off my headphones and walked to the front, expecting to see someone checking if we were still open. But when I looked, there was no one there. I peered out into the parking lot, but it was empty. I knew I'd heard the knock from this side of the building. I waited, but there was no repeat of the sound. I figured I must have imagined it and went back to work. Another hour or so passed, and I decided to take my lunch break. I grabbed my lunch bag and sat at one of the tables in the dining area, enjoying the peace and quiet. After finishing my meal, I went to grab the mop from the back, but something caught my eye. A man's face staring at me from outside the drive-thru window. His hair was messy, and his expression was blank. But his eyes, there was something off about them, like they were empty. I froze for a moment, watching as the man calmly turned and walked away. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. After a moment, I mustered up the courage to open the window and check if he was still there, but the darkness outside revealed nothing. I closed and locked the window, feeling on edge for the rest of my shift. As my shift neared its end, I started to relax a bit. The anxiety from earlier began to fade, and I focused on finishing up my tasks. One of the last things I had to do was take out the garbage, which I'd been avoiding. I checked the windows one last time before stepping outside, and everything seemed clear. I quickly made my way to the dumpster and started tossing the bags in, but barely 20 seconds in, the man appeared from around the corner. I stopped what I was doing and asked him what he needed, but he didn't respond. Instead, he approached me with that same empty stare. Now that I could see him fully, he was even more terrifying. A large man in a dirty, stained coat. I didn't know what else to do, so I bolted for the door. I managed to open it, but the man stuck his arm in, preventing it from closing completely. I ran to the other end of the restaurant, unlocking the front door and escaping just as the man closed in on me. I sprinted across the parking lot, dialing the police as I went. Within minutes, they arrived, but the man was already gone. We checked the CCTV footage, but his identity remained a mystery. What he wanted from me, I'll never know. But his creepy and unsettling behavior still gives me chills to this day.